What's up, everybody? Welcome back to GameScoop. I am your host, Damon Hatfield. I'm joined now by Justin Davis,
Hello.
Brian Altano, and Colin Moriarty.
This is fun.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Oh,
I'm going to get rid of it so I can pay attention.
There you go.
We're talking about the best third-party publishers, so everyone besides Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft.
Yep.
The guys that, bring us most of our games. Which are the best ones? Let's start with some numbers here. Let's start with maybe the most controversial, Electronic Arts.
They were the head for what you looked at Metacritic numbers.
Yeah, it's like in the past over the past year, they're like the best reviewed publisher of their games.
Sure.
In their whatever 30-year history, their average game review is 72, which is good.
Yeah.
So they make pretty good games. But like people love to hate on Electronic Arts, right? Their highest rated game ever is Mass Effect 2. Now they have all of PopCap games, so like that's really good in their library. They brought us Rock Band, Burnout, Need for Speed, and then upcoming they've got Battlefield 4, Peggle 2, and Titanfall. Probably everybody's most anticipated next-gen game. So they're a pretty solid publisher.
Yeah, I mean, I would say EA is probably my answer. I think people love to hate on EA, but they hate on like specific parts of it, and they're like, well, the SSX games used to be awesome, and I like that they published Rock Band, and I liked all the Peggle stuff, but screw EA. And like those sorts of people, I'm kind of like, well, they're a big company that does a lot of really, really good stuff and maybe some stuff you don't agree with.
Right, that's the thing. Like, I mean, they're rarely defined by their body of work. It's more so a few loud, bad decisions they make every now and then.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, there are genuine complaints about buying studios and then shutting them down
Yes.
and making them do things that, either making that studio work on things they didn't like. And I'm not discounting any of that. But I'm just saying I would never, ever boycott a company like that because they put out too much good stuff.
They got the brunt of the hatred for a lot of the microtransaction stuff that happened in the last few years.
Mass Effect 3 ending,
all that was
and then
all
the
their
SimCity
fault.
always online connection. But
Yeah.
like those are they made some poor decisions, but I think their library is pretty solid.
And they also did away with the online passes.
Yeah,
That's
true.
Yeah. EA is good. I mean, I like EA Sports a lot. I play Madden every year and the NHL games every year. And I understand people's complaints about those games in terms of their kind of just roster updates. And I think a lot of people don't sympathize with these studios that make these games, like EA Canada making NHL. Like, when you have to ship a game in 10 months, you don't have time to, like, get into the nitty-gritty of the engine and change everything. You have to focus on, like, 3 things or whatever that you want to change, right? 2 or 3 things. And so I actually give them credit for focusing on, especially with EA Canada, because I'm really familiar with the NHL games, focusing on things that bring incremental changes to these series, whatever. I just wish that they maybe priced them more affordably and made these games more platforms, like the NHL platform or the Madden platform, where you pay for your roster update, you pay for these updates and stuff like that. But I like EA Sports, and like you said, PopCap, like Plants vs. Zombies 2 is so good, and people also forget that these are the same studio that does take chances on things like Mirror's Edge or
They're bringing us Mirror's Edge 2.
Yeah,
That's the thing. Like, people will hate on like a company like Electronic Arts in one breath, and then be so happy that Mirror's Edge 2 got greenlit in the next breath. And I'm like, well, that's the same publisher.
Yeah. I will say that some of the hatred in regards to the annualizing of franchises and stuff like that, and especially the sports thing, like, you won't see a lot of innovation in their sports games, not only because they're on a crunch, but also because they did monopolize that whole side of the game there.
Yeah.
I mean, there are no other people that can make NFL games.
Yeah, that specific thing in terms of the NFL monopoly is one thing that I am upset about, because people do remember like Sega's like 2K5 football, football game as being like the best. It really isn't, but like that's like that's really the touchstone for people when they want to complain about their sports offerings, which I agree with. I wish that there was more competition. It would drive them to do more. You see a lot of that with Sony's baseball offering from Sony San Diego every year, and they have to compete directly with MLB 2K. You see a lot more competition in that field. Now that EA is bringing back the NBA series, hopefully we see more competition with NBA 2K.
Yep.
So I think competition's kind of half the problem, and it's not EA's fault that they dominate the field. Because if I owned a business and I can say, like, we're the only ones that can make NFL games, I'd be like, of course we would do that. I mean, that makes perfect sense. These games sell millions of copies a year. EA is smart.
Hey, you mentioned 2K. Next week they publish the most anticipated game of the year, right? GTA 5.
Yeah.
This is also the publisher that brings us BioShock, Borderlands 2, Civilization, and they published Oblivion.
Yeah,
back
they had a good year.
Right, yeah. So that's a pretty strong portfolio.
Yeah.
For years, 2K was like, they had GTA. They had GTA, and that was it. And now they finally sort of cracked the code, or maybe they just happened to get lucky or skillfully steered themselves towards building up a few other big franchises. But now I would definitely say that they've managed to elevate themselves into a higher tier.
Sure. I mean, their franchises are weird, though, right? Like, I mean, you're not going to get a BioShock every year. You're not going to get a Borderlands every year. You're not going to get a GTA every year. These aren't the sort of like, I mean, EA has their thing figured out in terms of that, but 2K, I mean, 2K could have a horrible year next year.
Yeah, for sure.
What about Japanese publishers? Capcom, Square Enix.
Speaking of horrible years next year.
Sega, Konami.
So Capcom's in trouble, and Konami's probably in trouble too.
Yeah.
And what's ironic about those companies is that they are not only iconic old school video game publishers and with internal developers, really talented internal developers, but they own great franchises. Like Capcom owns Mega Man, right? Like Capcom owns Street Fighter.
Resident Evil.
Resident Evil.
Yeah.
That was maybe what I would have gone to before Mega Man.
Well,
I mean, they still
perhaps.
own it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think Mega Man has more cachet now than Resident Evil as that series kind of becomes whatever the hell it's become in the last 2 games. Yeah. And they've they suffer from the same problem that Square Enix suffers from in terms of spending too much money on games, having too lofty of goals in terms of games being sold. For instance, Resident Evil 6 sold 5 million copies, which would be a huge success even for a first-party developer. And that was about 2 million off of their estimation, which is sad. That they thought these games were going to do better. Or whatever.
It's terrifying that we live in a world where you can sell 5 million copies of a game and it's a disappointment. I mean, what does that bode for next gen, where there won't be that type of install bases within the first few months, if not year?
I mean, when I think about who are sort of the premier third-party developers, not very many Japanese ones come to mind. But I was also surprised about. Like, I feel like there used to be a few companies that were, like, really easy to hate on, and I feel like they've mostly just gone away. Like, Ubisoft 2K stuff, I'm like, I like all their stuff. I like EA's lineup. I like Ubisoft's lineup. Square Enix has really, gotten IDOS in order, and Tomb Raider was really good. Zynga. That's very true. I just mean, like, there's not many, like, sort of top-tier third-party developers that I think are doing, consistently bad work or work that I'm not excited about.
Yeah, I mean, the Capcom and Konami thing is strange. To me, they were always the quintessential third parties. When you thought third parties, they were the names that were synonymous. Like, I mean, some of the franchises you just rattled off, like, define third-party games to me.
Yeah, think about Konami with, Metal Gear Solid, which is basically the only AAA thing that they do anymore. And they have Castlevania, which I think Lords of Shadow is actually a really great game on console. I wasn't fond of the 3DS game at all, but that's a game where that's a series that can come back at some point, but they need to readjust their expectations as well. And plus they have Pro Evolution Soccer, which competes with FIFA very fruitlessly, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So these things are problems. Square Enix is an interesting company. They're really it's a tale of 2 problems with them, or 1 problem and 1 good thing. And the problem is their internal developers. The good thing is that they very fortuitously went out and purchased Western developers that are keeping them afloat.
Yeah.
So when you think about things like they publish like Deus Ex or Tomb Raider, like Justin said, like these are offsetting losses and underwhelming sales for things like the Final Fantasy 13 series. And obviously Final Fantasy 14 was a disaster for a little while, although that's
I honestly think the running theme
now.
with a lot of these third-party games you've listed, especially that have a really good lineage, is that they have completely lost any brand identity. Like, Resident Evil doesn't know what it wants to be anymore. Castlevania doesn't know what it wants to be anymore. Final Fantasy doesn't know what it wants to be
What does
anymore.
it mean to be a Final Fantasy game?
Right.
now?
I mean, Resident Evil 6 was half survival horror, half Call of Duty, and you're going to piss off half the people playing that game, and they did.
Yeah.
So you're splintering off your fan bases doing that.
Konami's one of the lowest rated publishers. Average game review 65. Highest rated game ever is Metal Gear Solid 2. And they still have, I guess next year they've got Metal Gear Solid 5 and Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 that are coming.
Yeah, and also do, especially Metal Gear.
Those should do well, yeah. Metal Gear.
Do you think it's telling that we've had a whole conversation about third parties without even mentioning Activision?
Or we just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a plan.
He's got a plan.
Before we move back to the West, though, you did touch on it, like Atlas, I think, is in terms of quality, probably the best third-party publisher in Japan. And it's ironic that they're in trouble financially, but they're really not. Index, which is their parent company, is in a lot of trouble. The rumors are that Sega might buy Atlas, which would be a really huge problem for hardcore gamers, considering the angle that Sega's been taking lately.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Like, what is Sega today? Like, what do they have? I mean, they've got big franchises like Sonic, House of the Dead, and stuff like that. But like, looking at their upcoming games, I don't even know. They have a game called Sonic Lost World coming to Wii U. That's it that I know of.
Yeah, that's being sent to die.
It is, and it looks great, which is a shame.
But it's that usual Sonic hype cycle. It looks great, but then we'll learn more and then say.
So honestly, that's actually died down a little bit the last few years too, because the last Sonic Generations was great, and so was Sonic Colors. Sure. So that's two and that's coming from somebody who actually didn't really like Sonic growing up. All my friends were like, Sonic's better than Mario. And even later, the revisionist historian in me went back to play it, and I was like, Sonic sucks.
Yeah, can you get some of that crack that your friends were smoking when you were a kid?
Exactly. Kid crack. There's that, but I mean, they're also experimenting more in the mobile space than I think some of the other companies are. So they might be offsetting something there with, hey, buy 99 rings for $1.
Sega. Yeah, and they also have like a big like amusement like arcade business.
Yeah,
like casino. Yeah, they've got that too.
So, yeah, Sammy's
in Japan.
Uncle Sammy.
Yeah, Uncle Sammy. Yeah, I mean,
wants you to play some video games.
Sammy, I think, is doing really well for them in Japan, and like their financials are improving. But that's a company that doesn't take huge risks. Like that Yakuza game was announced for PlayStation 4.
Wait, Sammy doesn't take
no, Sammy don't take.
Sammy's the riskiest motherfucker in the world. Sammy's like, we're making a snowboarding arcade game that's 10 feet wide, and it costs $2,000 to make. We're going to put it in a pizza shop in Japan.
Well, what I was going to say was that it's like Sega probably won't bring that Yakuza game over. They're not going to bring Phantasy Star Online over for Vita.
Yeah.
That new Phantasy Star single-player game, they're probably not going to bring over. So they're a very focused company now. They are a shadow of their former selves. Obviously, they have been for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, just looking at something like Sonic realistically, like Sonic was really never very good. I mean, like
I agree with you.
And I agree with Altano in the sense that like when I grew up with a Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and I was all about Mario, and I loved it. And my friends, some of my friends had Genesis, and you played Sonic or Sonic 2, and you're like, Jesus. Yeah. Like it looks really nice, but like it doesn't play well. Like Super Mario World, especially in Super Mario 3, are like the pinnacle of gameplay, and you're gonna put something like Sonic next to that and pretend like they're the same. I don't know about that.
That's for a separate day. I can talk about this with you all day long.
I know. Coming back to the West, Bethesda.
Yeah, Bethesda's
really strong.
Bethesda's super strong. I mean, they're a tale of two publishers too, where like they have like weird, crappy games that like The Hunted, right? Was that weird? Something like that.
Yeah, wow. That?
And then because I went to an event and played it once.
Okay.
And then they have like games that don't kill, like Splash Damage's game Brink. They published that, but then they have Skyrim and
they have
Fallout.
They've got Dishonored.
Yeah.
That's the difference between their publishing record and their development record. Like the stuff that's done by Bethesda Game Studios is, they'll take the time and the money to ensure that game is a massive hit and a massive, quality, great game as well. So, but the stuff that they publish is they've definitely made some bad bets there.
Yeah, they published. What was that weird, like pulpy action game that they published?
Wet?
Wet. Yeah, Wet. That was the one I was thinking about. Yeah. They do publish like just bizarre stuff.
But yeah, strange choices.
Yeah.
Games like that, it's hard for games like that to exist anymore. They're just too expensive to make.
Upcoming, they have Elder Scrolls Online and Evil Within, which I don't know.
They're publishing that.
Horror game, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Huh.
Hopefully we'll hear more about Fallout 4 at some point too. I assume their internal studio is inevitably working on that.
Yeah.
There's Warner Brothers. We've got the Batman games. Then all the Lego games.
Yeah, the Lego games.
Oh, wow.
And they do a bunch of kid stuff, too. Yeah. It's like, these are the sorts of...
I love the Lego games.
Well, no, but I'm not even talking about that kid stuff, but like other, like they do like, 3DS, like kids
They've also
games.
got, they've also got The Witcher, and then they've got Dying Light and Mad Max. Oh. So there's like...
Weird.
They focus.
Hardcore stuff that they're
working
on.
It's a good mix of stuff there.
They've definitely come on strong. I remember distinctly several years ago, Warner Brothers had a booth at E3 and could not get anyone to pay attention to their Batman game. Look, you guys, we got this Batman game coming out.
Asylum?
Yeah, it was like E3, whatever year. Like the year before that game came out, no one gave a shit.
What was sitting 3 feet from that on the world's tiniest kiosk was Scribblenauts.
Oh, yeah.
And people were like, what the hell is this? And we all played it. I worked at GameSpot at the time. We gave it Game of the Show. Now it's a franchise.
Yeah.
They've got
Batman
characters in it and all DC characters and stuff like that. Yeah.
So that's what, like, Mad Max looks so-so. Some of their stuff looks so-so. But, like, big picture, they're definitely a third publisher that's come on very strong over this console generation.
I agree. And then ranked kind of low are both Ubisoft and Activision. Average game rating 66 for both of those.
Ubisoft's a little misleading because they have like Imagine Babies and all that stuff that I'm assuming
That's true. They've stopped that stuff.
Yeah, they pumped the brakes on
the
that.
Nintendo DS cash cow is like pitted out.
But I mean, I think
they did the Pets series.
Yeah.
Babies.
That was what was up
Z,
though. That was hot on the streets at one point.
I'm sure that if they could find a way to keep doing that kind of stuff on 3DS and Vita, they would.
Yeah.
There probably just isn't the same market for that kind of stuff.
I think this thing has changed. But I think what they're doing now...
They do Just Dance and all that other stuff.
They do. So. Far Cry 3 was awesome.
Far Cry 3 was awesome. That was really one of the great games, I think, of last year.
And then they'll do sort of adventure stuff like Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, a publisher of that nature putting out the two Rayman games that they put out, I mean...
Yeah, Rayman.
That's not really the biggest brand in the world, and visually it's kind of like, wow, what am I looking at here? But I mean, they took a risk with those games. They both reviewed very well. So
they have one of the most anticipated next-gen launch games with Watch Dogs,
and then Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed. Yeah.
I think Ubisoft is maybe the last of that. I mean, I consider the big three.
Splinter Cell.
Exactly. I consider the big three Ubisoft, EA, and Activision. And they're by far the most willing to take a risk of the three.
But they're also coming on hot recently too, which in the last few years, which I think is cool. Like Ubisoft has grown in terms of stature.
Yeah.
Maybe not in terms of money made. I don't know anything about their financials, but like I'm not an Assassin's Creed fan at all. But like, there's no denying that I'm in the minority on that. Like that series just murders. Like they're trying to annualize that and do their thing. They just announced a bunch of really great games. The World War I game that looks
all
really
of the
cool.
stuff running on the Ubi Art Engine is fantastic. I mean, to see that from a publisher of that magnitude,
I mean, stuff like Rayman,
really cool.
Just a 2D platformer, an open world game that's not based on a big franchise.
Yeah.
You know, they take
risks.
risks.
They've got South Park now.
Yeah, exactly. And and they even have some stuff in the hat that like they can pull it at any time. Like they go, hey, Prince of Persia, we have that.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
There it is.
That'll come back eventually.
Yeah,
for sure.
Beyond Good and Evil. Want one of those? Sure, we're working on it. You know, so.
What about Activision?
Activision is the smartest publisher in the market. I mean, like, there's no doubt about that. You know, like they dwarf everyone else, and I feel like they make interesting decisions. Now, like whether they're going to
Activision Blizzard now.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That, right?
And like whether or not they're going to like let their foot off the pedal at the right time with something like Call of Duty remains to be seen.
Absolutely not.
They might run that into the ground. But even if they run into the ground, even if Call of Duty falls and does 10 million units sold, I mean, still makes a ton of money for them. Like they're shrewd. Like they're much more shrewd than people give them credit for, especially with the Vivendi spin out and people kind of taking parts of that company now, including Bobby Kotick, which owns part of that company himself now through a venture capital firm that he created. Like, there's a little more fluidity there now with Activision. I think that they're going to surprise people with maybe some of the things they have in the future, but I don't know if that's
I think
true
being shrewd is just about the only thing that people give Activision credit for. I don't have a tremendous amount of respect for that company creatively. I think they had Tony Hawk, an awesome franchise.
Tony Hawk 2 is their best reviewed game.
Ran it into the ground by releasing one every single year. They had Guitar Hero, awesome franchise, ran it into the ground by releasing one every single year. And people are like, oh, they're so stupid. Why don't they rest those franchises for a year? And it's not that they're stupid. It's that they didn't give a shit.
To be fair,
we're going to make as much money as we can right now, and we do not care if that's not a business for us.
I agree.
10 years
I actually think that creativity was the downfall of some of those franchises. Somewhere at some point, somebody was like, let's not play it safe. Let's come out with a Tony Hawk that comes with a skateboard.
Well, they didn't have
that
a
was
choice.
a creative decision.
They come out with one every single year.
I know, and actually
nothing left.
The few before that were really bad, too.
Yeah.
I mean, just like some of the Underground and Downhill Jam and all the other...
I liked 4 a lot.
They really took that franchise. I mean, we don't even think about it anymore, but they took that into a thing that no one even wants to remember anymore. I don't think they'll ever
And
bring
we don't
it back.
now, like, Call of Duty just had its 10th year anniversary. 10 years ago did not exist, and we've had 10 games in 10 years. Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when people are like, no, it's going to be on top forever.
Well, think
Nothing's on top
Think
forever.
about the math. Like, I agree with what you said in terms of, like, they do look long term. They know what's going on, but they look at it in terms of, we could rest Call of Duty and sustain these studios that make them, like Sledgehammer, for a few more years and let them take their time on the game. But monetarily, that's not going to work out for them. It works out for them if they just rush the game in 2 years and get it out. And they've co-opted these different studios that they've acquired to make them all work on Call of Duty now because that's what makes most sense for them. Now, like, they own Raven, which is arguably like one of the most creative and probably one of the best shooter studios in the entire industry. And like all they do is make multiplayer maps now.
Which one do they do?
They did Singularity in the old
Singularity,
Wolfenstein games.
Yeah.
They were founded in Wisconsin specifically to work with it at the time. Like they have like great shooter pedigree. They have Neversoft. We were talking about Tony Hawk. Now they're a shooter studio. Like everything's kind of changed there. I think that they're big enough and have enough money and like we said, are shrewd enough to kind of pivot when the market calls for it. And I kind of wonder if you can really, like economically hate on a company that like was so financially stable that their parent company was taking all of the money that they were making to pay off their loans. Yeah. Like Activision is like super strong. Now, whether or not they collapse because they do to Call of Duty what they did to Guitar Hero, remains to be seen, but I say they did that to Guitar Hero knowing they were going to do that to Guitar Hero.
I mean, I think
and when the game crashed, when that series crashed, we're like, well, we made a bunch of money. We didn't really lose anything. So
but I mean, that's why I want to separate, like, giving someone props creatively and for the work that they do and giving them props for having good business sense.
Sure.
And that's what I mean by Activision. Like, I don't I'm not interested in Call of Duty. I'm not interested in not Disney Infinite, in Skylanders. Like they have $3 billion franchises, and all three I think are very worthy at this point, and they have potential to be. Like I'm not an analyst. I don't know whether Disney Infinity is going to eat Skylanders lunch. I think all three of those businesses could be in trouble. World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Skylanders.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that you have to separate these two things, creativity from the economic realities of being a publisher, but being a publisher inherently and owning studios internally means that like it's not so much about the creativity as much as it is about the economic output.
Of course not.
Of those
I can't play Bobby Kotick's Eighth House.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like if you have an independent developer that goes to a publisher, think about something like think about Obsidian or something. Like they went to Bethesda specifically to make New Vegas, right? Like this is a creative studio, and we know that Raven or Neversoft has the same creative vision, but they just don't have the freedom, and so like you kind of have to judge them more as an umbrella than anything else because they don't have that same creative.
I mean, let me ask this: what do the Call of Duty Ghost pre-orders look like right now?
They're really bad, but
that's
a little bit misleading because there's next-gen consoles coming out, and so that depresses pre-orders because people are waiting to see what direction they go.
Yeah, because I mean, the only way for that message to ever get across that we are, and I feel the same way as you. I'm fatigued on a lot of these series. But it's just like you said, like Warcraft. If they lose 3 million players, they still have 10, 12 million players, whatever it is. Yeah. So, I mean, the only way to really say we don't want this anymore is to not buy it every year, and people keep buying it every year.
I guess the main thing that I want to communicate is I feel like Electronic Arts, I'm going to go back to what we opened the show with, I feel like they get a lot of hate, and when you compare them as like a mega publisher to like an Activision as a mega publisher, as a gamer, like forget being a shareholder, like you get crazy stuff like Mirror's Edge 2 from EA. Like Activision is not a company that does that sort of thing.
Yeah, what's the biggest risk that they've taken?
Well, they did take some risks, like Prototype, and
they've got Destiny coming out.
Yeah,
right? Okay. They do have a big next-gen original series coming out.
Not a huge risk because of the pedigree of the developer behind them.
Yeah.
But I will say, like I didn't like Prototype.
Prototype was a risk. You're right.
Yeah, well, it was, and Prototype was like the poor man's Infamous, so that game was like totally never going to succeed at all. But what's interesting about that studio is even after they made Prototype 2, like they were immediately shut down, and they probably weren't losing money, but that's Activision saying like we anticipate that you're going to lose money eventually, so we're shutting you down.
Yeah.
They just run themselves a little bit differently. I don't have a lot of respect for, like you said, creativity, like the creativity coming out of them, but I know those studios have it in them. Mm-hmm. They just don't exist in that ecosystem like Ubisoft or Sony's first party or Nintendo's first party where they can really take risks. But everyone shuts studios down, and everyone's going to be mad for, at publishers for, shutting down a studio like, Sony shut down 3 last year. Those kinds of things happen. So,
I also think it's a little bit of a strange example, but like a publishing imprint like Chilingo, on mobile, they publish indie mobile games. That's
shout out to Levi Buchanan.
Shout out to Levi Buchanan. That's owned by EA.
Yeah,
like wholly owned by EA, and they publish tiny one-man little indie games on the App Store every single week. And when an indie developer is working with Chilingo, EA is who they're working with.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't really. I feel like people that are hating on a company like that aren't really seeing the big picture.
Yeah, that's far less of the like sort of David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Them versus gamers approach that I think everyone thought would sort of connected them with a few years ago. Like that absolutely is much more Activision now, I'd say. I mean, does Activision have an indie games label? Do they need one?
They do some interesting stuff on like mobile and some smaller stuff, but broadly speaking, I would say that, EA is a much friendlier company for that sort of thing.
After talking about it, I think personally I'm the biggest fan of maybe Bethesda and 2K. Like they just seem to be making the games that I like the most.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I would this year, honestly, really, it would probably be Ubisoft, which is weird for me. Like I really loved Rayman. I really loved Splinter Cell. Like Splinter Cell. It was not a game I expected to connect with me, and it just was just like, damn, this game is awesome. I don't really play stealth games like that. I think they're sort of tedious, and the more actiony they get, the more first-person shootery they get, and the less I get interested. Yeah. But it sort of hit this perfect right in the middle between a good action game and a good stealth game, and it just really connected with me. I'm excited for Watch Dogs. I'm sort of cautiously optimistic. I'm a little worried that it's going to be like my third or fourth big open world game this year, and I don't want to get too fatigued on that. But Assassin's Creed could be cool again. I'm with Colin, and that
I'm actually excited for a 4.
Yeah, I very much love all of the world building that goes around those things. And when I finally sit down with a controller, it's a different story. Yeah. But we'll see. I mean, yeah, Ubisoft right now is killing it.
Yep.
Justin and Colin, do you have? Favorite third-party publishers?
I feel the same as you guys. Really excited about Ubisoft. I know I keep harping on it. I don't want to sound like I'm not some crazy EA fanboy, but I just when I was
you don't sound like a crazy EA fanboy.
When I was doing research for this Game Scoop, I'm like, man, Burnout Paradise was dope. Like they've just done like a lot of really, really good stuff over the last several years. But in terms of what's coming up, Ubisoft. Rayman was incredible. Watch Dogs is going to be really good. I think Splinter Cell, all the same stuff.
The last Need for Speed game they made was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like Hot Pursuit a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I like Hot Pursuit 2 a lot on PS2. Long time ago. I think of the ones we've discussed. I think Atlas speaks to me a lot in terms of Catherine and Dragon's Crown. They are one of the last adventurous Japanese publishers, and they fund cool games, and they have a great internal studio that makes good games too. So I think that's really positive for them.
I'm surprised you didn't say Insomniac.
Insomniac's a developer that they're with it. I love obviously Insomniac's games.
Because they're traders.
Yeah, no, I'd love for them to bring Resistance back, and
Sure.
And the Resistance team is working on Sunset Overdrive, so that's their best studio, that's their best internal team, and that bodes very well for that game. So I think Xbox One owners are going to have something cool there.
Sure.
And I agree with you. Ubisoft seems to just be coming on really hot right now, and I agree. Games like Rayman are so cool, and no one takes risks like that anymore. But when you see those games they just announced this week, they're just so different than another bro shooter or another Halo or another Killzone.
And I feel like they can make them work.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks, guys. Stay tuned for more from IGN Games Group.